Jaya Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Rajajanaranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jairadha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jairadha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajanaranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya. Prabhupada. Now Vishnupada, Prahamsa, Pivachakacharya, Sridhara, Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada Ki. This confounded Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupada, Prahamsa, Pivachakacharya, Sridhara, Sri Srimad, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Jai. Maharaj Kam Ki Jai. Nita Gaur Brahmanan. Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 20, The Structure of the Universe, texts 29 through 33. Most of them don't have purports, so I'll just read them. And then the last one, I'll do the Sanskrit and word for word. So text 29. Outside the ocean of yogurt is another island known as Pushkaradweep, which is 6,400,000 yojanas, 51,200,000 miles wide, twice as wide as the ocean of yogurt. It is surrounded by an ocean of very tasteful water as broad as the island itself. On Pushkaradweep, there is a great lotus flower with 100 million pure golden petals, as effulgent as the flames of fire. That lotus flower is considered the sitting place of Lord Brahma, who is the most powerful living being, and who is therefore sometimes called Bhagavan. Text 30. In the middle of that island is a great mountain named Manasotara, which forms the boundary between the inner side and the outer side of the island. Its breadth and height are 10,000 yojanas, 80,000 miles. On that mountain, in the four directions, are the residential quarters of demigods, such as Indra. In the chariot of the sun god, the sun travels on the top of the mountain in an orbit called the Samvatsara, encircling Mount Meru. The sun's path on the northern side is called Uttarai, and its path on the southern side is called Dakshinai. One side represents a day for the demigods, the other represents their night. And this one has a short purport. The movement of the sun is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Yasyagya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakra. The sun orbits around Mount Meru for 6 months on the north side and for 6 months on the southern side. This adds up to the duration of a day and night of the demigods in the upper planetary systems. Text 31. The ruler of this island, the son of Maharaj Priyavata, named Vitihotra, had 2 sons named Ramanaka and Dataki. He granted the 2 sides of the island to these 2 sons, and then personally engaged himself in activities for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like his elder brother, Medhadhiti. Text 32. For the fulfillment of material desires, the inhabitants of this tract of land worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, represented by Lord Brahma. They offer their prayers as follows. And I'll read the Sanskrit for text 33. Yatat karman karmayam lingam brahma lingam janorachayat ekantamadvayam shantam tasmai bhagavate namaiti. Yatat karma mayam lingam brahma lingam janorashyat ekantamadvayam shantam tasmai bhagavate namahiti. Yatat karmayam lingam brahma lingam janorachyat ekantamadvayam shantam tasmai bhagavate namaha nam iti. Yat, which, tat, that. Karma Mayam, obtainable by the Vedic ritualistic system. Lingam, the form. Brahma Lingam, which makes known the supreme Brahman. Jana, a person. Archayat, must worship. Ekantam, who has full faith in the one supreme. Advayam, non-different. Shantam, peaceful. Tasmai, unto him. Bhagavate, the most powerful. Nama, our respects. Et, thus. Translation. Lord Brahma is known as Karmamaya, the form of ritualistic ceremonies. Because of his performing ritualistic ceremony, because by performing ritualistic ceremonies, one may attain his position, and because the Vedic ritualistic hymns become manifest from it. He is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead without deviation, and therefore, in one sense, he is not different from the Lord. Nevertheless, he should be worshipped not as the monists worship him, but in duality. One should always remain a servitor of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Worshipable Deity. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Brahma, the form of manifest Vedic knowledge. Purport. In this verse, the word karma mayam, obtainable by the Vedic ritualistic system, is significant. The Vedas say Swadharma Nishtam Shata Janmabi Puman Verinchantam Eti. One who strictly follows the principles of Varnashram Dharma for at least 100 births will be rewarded with the post of Lord Brahma. It is also significant that although Lord Brahma is extremely powerful, he never thinks himself one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always knows that he is an eternal servitor of the Lord, because the Lord and the servant are identical on the spiritual platform. Lord Brahma is here addressed as Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. But if a devotee serves him with full faith, the meaning of the Vedic literature is revealed to him. Therefore, Brahma is called Brahma Lingam, which indicates that his entire form consists of Vedic knowledge. Om Aginatermandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshamitamina Tasma Shri Guruve Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sarigora Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're continuing with the 20th chapter of the 5th canto, titled The Structure of the Universe, where there is a description of Bhumandala, which is taken literally a plane, a thick plane, disk, you could say, that bisects the universe. That is to say that in the Vedic conception, if one takes a very literal understanding of it, there's an egg-shaped universe that is bisected by a plane with, or a thick disk of Earth, one could say, with several layers to it. And then above are various planetary systems, and below is water, which is, of course, very different than the modern materialistic way of looking at the universe. Of course, in the modern conception, in scientific, in the conception of material science, and not only modern material science, but also in the Siddhantic literatures, such as the Surya Siddhanta. Uh, there is, the conception of, the Earth as a globe, and that there are various orbits uh, that can be considered either around the sun or from the point of view of the Earth, if one would like to add epicycles, that is the occasional retrograde motion of certain planets. And then, of course, in the modern conception, there's also galaxies, uh, various sun-like objects uh, scattered throughout mostly empty space. Before I start talking about the uh, mm, structure of Bhumandala and possible interpretations, I'll talk a little bit about uh, epistemology in that, uh, how do we understand or gain knowledge at all? So, in the Vedic conception, there are three processes of epistemology. And there are actually a bit more, but in the analysis of Rupa Goswami, they boil down really to three. Pratyaksha, which is sense perception. I see something, I hear something, uh, I feel something. And then there's Anuman, which is logical deduction. I start with certain premises, and then through the rules of logic, I derive uh, conclusions that are inescapable if one starts with those premises. And then, of course, there is Shabda Praman, uh, which is hearing from authorized sources. A lot of modern scientists or philosophers of science, uh, or scientists who think they're doing philosophy of science, will tell you that it is just the first two that they rely on. I'm sure all of you have seen such people discuss their viewpoints, either public figures or maybe personally in your own life. Uh, or maybe if, uh, like me, you were foolish enough to be an atheist at one point, you might have made these arguments yourself that, oh, religion just relies on revelation, is another uh, name for Shabda Praman. Um, while, science, like we know by uh, careful experimentation, by the evidence of our senses, by reasonable deductions, that what you get by your revelation is nonsense, that it's not true. And there are multiple ways, of course, that one can attack this line of reasoning. Of course, the first is that we's don't know anything. Strictly speaking, if one wants to be very technical, which one should in philosophical debates, one should not let your opponent get away with linguistic sleights of hand. Because in a debate, generally, whoever controls the language wins. But strictly speaking, knowledge cannot be in the plural. In that I might know something and you might know something, but strictly speaking, when we say, we know something, it means that both you and I know it. So then the question becomes, how do I know it? And how does this fictitious opponent that I'm arguing against know it? How does he know that uh, electrons exist, or that we put a man on the moon, or that far off stars are sun-like, or anything? And the question is, again, revelation. Uh, he learned it either through teachers, professors, or through uh, scientific publication, whether that's a textbook, whether that is uh, journal articles. Actually, the whole edifice of modern science depends on this revelatory principle, in that there's the peer review system, uh, where one submits to journals, it is reviewed by the journal editors to make sure uh, that there are no obvious errors, and then it is published. Um, and many times, actually, it is published in a certain sense with the presumption of honesty, uh, in that uh, you just have to trust that if the person says we did this experiment and got these results, uh, that they actually did the experiment and got those results. Um, the and this has actually led to uh, many problems in what is called the reproducibility crisis. In certain fields of study, psychology is very affected. Biology, I believe, is affected as well. Even some fields of physics, which has mostly dodged the reproducibility crisis. So, for example, I believe the mm, cuprate superconductor community uh, is dealing with it. And the reproducibility crisis is simply the fact that when people go to reproduce the results of these various studies, these various mm, conclusions that people have drawn, uh, they aren't reproducing them. So the idea, of course, for a bit more context, the idea in science is that, I do some experiment, I publish a result, uh, including my methods, uh, experimental apparatuses, etc. And then anybody who reads the paper with the uh, proper resources should be able to redo the experiment and get more or less the same results that I had. Of course, replication studies are very far behind original studies. And that's really due to sociological reasons, in that there's no glory in being the second person to do something. Uh, Everybody wants to be the first person to discover something because one satisfies one's desire for fame and adoration and position. And it helps one get grants and uh, jobs and whatnot, while being a replication person. Uh, you get a basically pat on the back saying your work is very important to science, but you don't really get any of the material goods that, or the type of things that one needs to exist in the uh, world of academia. Another point is that, okay, so both ours and theirs rely on uh, revelatory mm, methods. Uh, so, how should we differentiate between the two? The and one to do so, one should consider the character of the uh, acharyas, one should say, in both the lines. Uh, I've had the occasion to look at, to be close to, one could say, the private lives of many scientists, either ones that are already well established or those who are entering the various fields um, and are uh, on their way to becoming the next generation of scientists. And I have to say that in many cases, their uh, personal lives are, I'll just say, not very well ordered, to put it mildly. Uh, there's so much uh, drama, betrayal, backbiting in their personal and even professional dealings with each other. And if they behave that way, if they are dishonest and duplicitous in their transmission or their dealings in their personal lives, uh, then why should we trust them anymore when transmitting knowledge? Uh, if uh, if they are known to be mm, of not very high character. Now, I'm not saying all scientists are like this, of course. One will, of course, find scientists who live very uh, upstanding, uh, maybe even religious lives. Uh, but of course, that isn't necessarily very widespread, especially with the propaganda in recent decades about the mutual incompatibility of science and religion. While if one looks at the Vaishnavacharyas, their behavior, their personal character and behavior is, of course, on a very high level. So they're not duplicitous in that way. We should, mm, so we should listen to what they're saying more. That being said, it is hard to ignore the discrepancies uh, between the Bhagavatam view of the universe and the modern or even the Siddhantic view of the universe. Uh, as I mentioned at the beginning of the class. So there are various ways that one can interpret this uh, discrepancy. Uh, and the and I will give a disclaimer here that none of the uh, interpretations or understandings are necessarily complete. There's none that are, this is a slam dunk case, that, oh, this is the interpretation. Um, and uh, all the other ones are, uh, you know, just bunk or hyperbolic or something like that. Uh, I will make the statement here. I don't think anybody on this call uh, believes in the position which I'm about to contradict, but just to drive the point home, the Earth is not flat. The Earth is a globe. There are many devotees who, upon their reading Bhagavatam, they come to the conclusion that flat Earth is the way to go. Um, this is not the case. There are, of course, many, even just perceptual evidences that the Earth is, in fact, spherical. Uh, and also, this was also understood by the Vaishnavacharyas, because the Earth and the various planets are described as spherical in the Surya Siddhanta. And this tension, even between the Puranic and the Siddhantic views, is explored throughout Vaishnav history. If one wants more information on the history of kind of the viewpoint of that, there is a book that was either was put out, or might almost have been put out by the BI called, I believe, Bhugola Tattva, the Tattva of the spherical Earth. Um, Once again, I don't think anybody here would necessarily be a flat Earth pundit, but in case you encounter any. That being said, it does seem that the Earth of the Bhagavatam is very different than the Earth of the hmm, of our experience. So, what are various? So there are various interpretations. I'll start with the various interpretations given by Satiputta Prabhu, which there are four. Uh, One is that Bhumandala is a polar projection um, of the Earth. So basically, um, one can take the globe of the Earth and uh, basically, if one thinks of the globe of the Earth and a plane under it and takes vectors from a certain point, such as the North Pole, uh, through the Earth, and then one projects whatever point that vector pierces the surface of the Earth to the point where it pierces the plane. One can get a flat map uh, from a spherical object. Uh, and this gives the so this gives a flat projection uh, such as is described in um, the Bhagavatam, and it fits with a spherical Earth. Uh, And as well, the Varsha, known as Bharat Varsha, corresponds to uh, India as well as the surrounding um, uh, areas. Uh, this saw another aspect of this mm, model is that we were reading in uh, one of the verses that I read today that the on the demigods on Mount Meru, their day is 6 months and their night is 6 months, which corresponds uh, which does correspond to this model in that the center, Mount Meru, is the North Pole, the land of the midnight sun, where it's a day for 6 months out of the year when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, and the Earth is tilted towards the sun, or the northern part of the Earth is tilted towards the sun, and then night for a similar amount of time when it is tilted away. Of course, uh, the issue with this model is that if one goes backwards, that is, takes Bhumandala and fits it to the sphere, the geographical, or at least Jambudvipa fits it to a sphere. Much of the geographical references are not realistic. Uh, so the second model that Sautaputta Prabhu gives is Bhumandala as a map of the solar system, in that there is the plane of the ecliptic, that is the orbit of the sun, and that this represents the um, plane of Bhumandala as uh, described in the Bhagavatam. This does have some correspondences with even the numerical uh, features found in the Bhagavatam descriptions. For example, the orbits of the various planets, even considering their epicycles, correspond to certain landmarks in Bhumandala. Uh, one could say that usually in this model, Manasotra Mountain corresponds to the asteroid belt. And there are various other correspondences that we could make. Of course, the issue with this model is that Bhumandala is supposed to stretch to the edges of the universe in the Bhagavatam model. We're not supposed to be able to see outside it. Well, we obviously can see outside our own solar system. The next model that Sautaputta Prabhu gives is a bit more terrestrial. That is a topographical map of South Central Asia. That Jambudvipa itself just represents the northern hemisphere. Well, that actually the northern hemisphere and the planisphere interpretation. But if it represents a smaller part of the Earth, then it just represents South Central Asia. Such that the regions outside the various mountains can be considered that which represents the outside of Vedic culture. And the fourth interpretation is that it is the celestial realm of the demigods, that the demigods exist in a space that is different, but possibly corresponding to ours, and that the Bhagavatam is written from their point of view. This also can correspond to something that has been talked about among the TOVP team, which is connected with the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I've talked about it before, probably a couple months ago, which is the information structure interpretation. In that one views the Virat Rupa, as described in the second canto, as an information structure that is a ordered set of information that then manifests the universe in the same way that kind of an instruction set or a program on a computer can manifest things in reality, like a 3D printer can. And in this view, Bhu Mandala is in some sense the middle point between the, in one sense, purely informational Virat Rupa and the purely physical world of the modern scientific conception. And one could, it might be that the demigods could view this, but it's not necessarily that one should have a literal interpretation of the various things described in the Bhagavatam. Because obviously, standing here, if I look north, I don't see Mount Meru. And of course, there are other interpretations or understandings as well, such as saying Mount Meru is the core of the earth, and there are and that it's a description along those lines, as well as connections with the more subtle aspects of human existence. And there are many things that people have tried to understand with this. So basically, just to reiterate, there's not necessarily one interpretation of how the Puranic view of the universe corresponds with what we see. But it is something that a lot of acharyas in the past and now our ISKCON scientists are considering. So we have about 11 minutes-ish. I'll stop here. If there are any comments, questions, additions, subtractions, etc.
Haribol, Prabhuji.
Haribol.
Thank you so much. Oh,
no, go ahead, Prabhuji. You can go first.
Thank you. Prabhu, could you just tell us a little bit about the format of the discussions that you had with the devotees in Alachua. How is it
Hmm.
that the devotees present their various ideas and conceptions and making sense of what's there in Bhagavatam? Could you tell us a little bit about the methodology?
Yeah, so I mean, like the presentations themselves were presentations, just like in any scientific forum or scientific conference. Um, and the exact way that they presented it depended on their ideas. So some were very mathematical, and just like in any as scientific or uh, technical talk, they presented the mathematics, and there's time for discussion among the other people who knew the mathematics there. Some were a bit more interpretive, uh, in which they argued, I guess, a bit more philosophically, one could say. And then the philosophers and scientists were able to ask questions. So yeah, the format is just like any other scientific conference. Uh, it just happened that it was basically all devotees there, and we were discussing things in the Bhagavatam, uh, and in modern science, of course, and trying to find ways to uh, reconcile the two where they needed to be reconciled.
Haribol Babaji.
I will.
So I had a discussion some time back with a group of devotees. There was a devotee named Gyanadas. I think he was part of the BI many,
Hmm,
many years ago. And his name is now Bhaktivedanta Nimi Maharaj.
hmm,
And in the discussion, it came up that there were kind of two views of looking at things. One was the ontology of everything, which is essentially looking at maybe the need to reconcile how the science aligns with modern science, et cetera, et cetera. But then also the teleology regarding Srimad Bhagavatam, which is for what purpose really was Srimad
hmm.
Bhagavatam given? And I think Srila Prabhupada wanted that by some degree of ability to reconcile modern science and the statements of Sri Siddhartha or Srimad Bhagavatam, it would give credence to introducing Bhagavatam's teleology, the purpose and the
Right.
value of Bhagavatam in the academic community and so forth and so on. Of course, there was a big situation, many years ago, of devotees encountering the fifth canto of Bhagavatam and not being able to digest or reconcile, and
Hmm,
it had impact on their uh, being able to continue in the practice. So that's why this discussion came up about the teleology of Srimad Bhagavatam, what's its aim and what's its purpose, and that should really be the focus, and that those
hmm.
who are very qualified, like yourself and others, can formulate reconciling factors to help promote Bhagavatam in the academic community. But if the teleology is lost, teleology means like the purpose or aim,
Right.
then it affects practitioners.
Yeah.
Because if faith becomes affected and faith is the actual currency in bhakti, then things become disturbed. So keeping in mind the vichar, this idea about vichar, upakrama, upasamhara, abhyas, etc. Keeping that in line, if the purpose of Bhagavatam is established and we operate as practitioners on that basis, then sort of crises of faith and other things around inability to reconcile certain ontological
Yeah.
factors will come up.
Yeah. So yeah, for most devotees, I would say they don't really have to worry um, about the so much about these sections of the fifth canto. Because like you said, uh, they should more focus on the purpose for which Bhagavatam was given, which is to, uh, give pure bhakti, pure love of Krishna. Of course, that purpose is in every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Although, don't ask me how. Uh, yeah, the fact that um, the height and breadth of Manasotra mountain is 10,000 yojanas leads to pure love of God. And yeah, for many, it will probably or it might satisfy them to know that somebody's working on it. And for those who are, uh, very disturbed by these things, or maybe not disturbed, but very interested in these things. Of course, we have the wonder of the internet now, that can, uh, so one can access what the BI is doing. So bihstudies.org, I believe. If you look up Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies, you can find the website where there's various things. We also have a YouTube page that's a bit behind in uploading things, but everything, all the various conferences and stuff will be uploaded. But yes, it's also very common for devotees to have issues with the fifth canto. If you talk to devotees that were at the BBT at the time, uh, it seemed that Prabhupada even had a bit of trouble with translating the fifth canto. He was apparently producing translations at a quarter of his normal speed um, when he reached the section of the fifth canto. So having difficulties with Bhagavatam cosmology is nothing new. Uh, but yeah, your point is well appreciated that for most devotees, focusing on the teleology is sufficient. And it's really, um, for the most part, the job of, or the service of um, scientific minded devotees to do these things. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, anybody? Going once, going twice. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.